Imagine this. It is 2 in the morning and you are wide awake, not because you have to be, but because something inside your brain simply refuses to shut down. The world outside is completely silent, and there is a strange, almost electric feeling of freedom that only exists in those late-night hours when everyone else is asleep. You tell yourself you are just a night owl, that this is simply how you are wired, that some people are naturally built for the night, and there is nothing wrong with that. But what if I told you that researchers at one of the most prestigious universities in the entire world have just released findings so alarming that they are now calling late-night habits one of the most underestimated threats to long-term brain health in modern human history? Welcome to Intelevo Mind, where today we are breaking down the Stanford warning that every night owl on the planet desperately needs to hear before it is too late.
Stanford University's Sleep Research Division has spent decades studying what happens to the human brain during the hours most people are awake, when they should be sleeping. What they found is deeply unsettling and completely contradicts the popular belief that you can simply make up for lost sleep on the weekend, or that being a night owl is just a harmless personality trait. Their research revealed that consistently staying up late, even by just 1 or 2 hours past your body's natural sleep window, triggers a measurable cascade of neurological events that begin to structurally damage your brain over time. The hippocampus, which is the region of your brain responsible for forming new memories and regulating emotional responses, shows significant signs of accelerated deterioration in chronic late sleepers. Even more alarming is the discovery that the glymphatic system, which is essentially your brain's built-in waste disposal mechanism, only activates fully during deep sleep in the early part of the night. When you stay up late, you are essentially preventing your brain from taking out its own trash. And over months and years, that toxic buildup begins to lay the groundwork for serious neurodegenerative conditions.
Here at Intelevo Mind, we talk a lot about the psychological stories we tell ourselves. And nowhere is that more dangerous than in the identity of the night owl. Millions of people around the world have built their entire self-concept around being someone who comes alive at night. They are more creative after midnight, more focused at 2 in the morning, more productive when the rest of the world is asleep. And here is the uncomfortable truth. That feeling is completely real. It is not your imagination. But what Stanford's research helps us understand is why it feels that way. And the answer is far more disturbing than most night owls want to accept. When you stay up past your natural sleep window, your body begins producing higher levels of dopamine as a compensatory stress response. This dopamine surge creates a genuine feeling of alertness, creativity, and even euphoria that feels like peak performance, but is actually your brain running on emergency fuel. You are not thriving in those late hours. You are experiencing a neurological stress response that feels good in the short term while quietly accelerating cognitive decline in the long term. Let us get specific about the damage, because this is where the Stanford warning becomes impossible to ignore. Chronic late sleeping has been directly linked to a 30% reduction in prefrontal cortex activity, which is the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, impulse control, and long-term decision-making. This means that people who consistently stay up late are literally operating with significantly reduced cognitive capacity during their waking hours without even realizing it. The research also shows a dramatic increase in cortisol dysregulation among night owls, which means their stress hormone system is essentially broken, making them more anxious, more emotionally reactive, and far more vulnerable to depression and burnout. Perhaps the most alarming finding involves the accumulation of amyloid plaques in the brains of chronic late sleepers, which are the same toxic protein deposits associated with the early development of Alzheimer's disease. This is not a distant theoretical risk. This is a measurable biological process that begins within weeks of establishing a consistent late-night pattern. Your brain is not invincible, and the hours you spend awake after midnight are not free. They are being borrowed against your future cognitive health.
If the science is this clear and the damage is this real, then why do millions of intelligent, informed people still find themselves unable to go to bed at a reasonable hour? The answer lies in a powerful psychological phenomenon called revenge bedtime procrastination, which was first studied extensively in populations that experience high levels of daytime stress and low levels of personal autonomy. When your entire day is consumed by obligations, responsibilities, and demands from other people, the late night hours become the only time that psychologically feels like yours. Going to bed feels like surrendering the last piece of freedom you have, and your brain will resist that surrender with every tool at its disposal. Social media platforms and streaming services have weaponized this psychological vulnerability with extraordinary precision, using intermittent variable reward systems to keep your dopamine loop activated just long enough to steal another hour, and then another, and then another. Understanding this mechanism is the first step to breaking free from it, because once you recognize that your late-night habits are not a personality trait, but a psychological response to a life that does not give you enough space, you can begin to address the real problem at its source.
So what do you actually do with this information if you are a genuine night owl who has spent years or even decades living on a late schedule? The first and most important step is to stop treating your sleep timing as a fixed identity and start treating it as a biological system that can be gradually recalibrated. Stanford's own sleep researchers recommend a process called sleep phase advancement, which involves shifting your bedtime earlier by just 15 to 20 minutes every few days until your sleep window aligns more closely with your body's natural circadian rhythm. You must also address the psychological root of your late-night habits by creating intentional spaces of freedom and autonomy during your daytime hours so that the night no longer feels like your only escape. Reduce your exposure to blue light at least 90 minutes before your target bedtime, because blue light directly suppresses melatonin production and keeps your brain in a state of artificial daytime alertness. Most importantly, begin to reframe your relationship with sleep, from seeing it as lost time to understanding it as the single most powerful performance-enhancing and brain-protecting tool available to any human being on Earth. Your brain is the most sophisticated and irreplaceable organ in the known universe, and it is counting on you to protect it. The Stanford warning is not designed to shame night owls or make you feel guilty about your habits. It is a wake-up call from some of the world's most rigorous scientists, telling you that the choices you make in the dark have consequences that show up in the light. Here at Intelevo Mind, our mission is to bring you the psychological and neuroscientific truths that empower you to make better decisions for your mind and your future. If this video opened your eyes to something you needed to hear, then make sure you subscribe to Intelevo Mind right now, because every single week we go deep into the psychology and brain science that most people never get access to. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join our growing community of people who are committed to protecting their minds and mastering their lives. Your brain deserves better, and so do you.